Have you ever had those nights when you're lying in bed trying to fall asleep and your mind just won't stop spinning? You start thinking about something that's probably never going to happen, but somehow it feels real. What if I fail? What if they don't like me? What if I'm falling behind everyone else? One thought leads to another, and suddenly it's 3 a.m. Nothing's actually changed except now you're exhausted, sleep deprived, and in a worse mood than before. When this keeps repeating, it starts to affect your whole life. It just drains you, your time, your energy, everything. And learning how to handle overthinking, how to stop these thoughts from running your life, is something we all need. For me, it took a long time to understand how to deal with them. Those thoughts still come. But I don't let them stay too long. Instead of letting my restless mind control me, I try to lead them, and honestly, ever since then, life just feels lighter. In one book I read, Letting Go by David R. Hawkins, there was this one line that completely changed the way I see thoughts. It said, one feeling, for instance, can create literally thousands of thoughts over a period of time. I realized most of my thoughts weren't even real. They were created by my feelings. In the past, I used to think those thoughts were me, but they're not. They just come from my feelings. One tiny feeling can spiral into endless thoughts. Like when we feel angry, our mind starts making up stories. They don't respect me. They always do this to me. But those thoughts aren't true. They're just what anger wants us to believe. Anger, this one simple feeling, can build a whole story with hundreds of reasons to stay upset. And that's when I realized, if I can take care of that one feeling, I can stop hundreds of negative thoughts. Because humans are naturally wired to think negatively. It's part of our survival instinct. We need to make a conscious effort to separate ourselves from those automatic feelings and thoughts. They appear on their own without us choosing them, but it's our choice whether we let them stay or let them go. Once I start to understand this and choose to stop letting them run me, I take my power back. I feel more grounded, more in control of myself. Instead of being led by my emotions, I start to lead them. And slowly those negative feelings stop growing. So the first step I take is just to be aware of what I'm feeling. To do this, I think of myself as having two selves. The first is my emotional self, the unconscious part of me that feels and reacts automatically without awareness. The second is my rational self, the conscious part that quietly observes and understands what my emotional self is going through. So when those unconscious feelings rise up, my rational self steps in and just notices them. Like, oh, that anxious energy is coming up again instead of I am anxious. Or here comes that feeling again instead of I'm fearful. And here's why that awareness matters. That awareness breaks the link between emotion and thought. It keeps the emotion from turning into endless what if stories in my mind. When I say I'm noticing anger instead of I am angry, it separates me from the emotion. I'm no longer defined by it. I'm just observing it. And when that separation happens, the emotion loses its fuel. The overthinking starts to fade, but when I don't recognize the emotion, the brain doesn't know what's happening. It just senses discomfort and starts guessing. Maybe I'll fail. Maybe they'll judge me. Maybe I did something wrong. The mind tries to explain the feeling by creating stories around it. That's how fear turns into overthinking. So that awareness makes a huge difference. In the beginning, it does take some effort, and sometimes you might only catch it after the what if spiral has already been running for a while, but you just keep training your mind to see it when it shows up. And over time, you start to notice it much sooner. Now that we know those endless negative thoughts aren't real, there's really no reason to stay stuck in them. So why not shift that energy into something useful? Because worry doesn't help the outcome at all. For example, when I had an important meeting coming up, I spent the whole week worrying if I'd say the wrong thing or look unprepared, and in the end, it didn't go well. Did worrying make the result any better? Of course not. The reason it went badly was probably because I wasn't fully prepared, or maybe I just didn't have the skills for it at that time, so just worrying itself doesn't change the result, especially not in a good way. It only made the whole week miserable for no reason. Instead, I could have used that time to prepare or practice, and that would have set me up for a better result. On the other hand, sometimes things actually turn out fine in the end, even after we've spent days worrying. Thoughts like, what if I don't finish on time? Or what if I mess up and embarrass myself? And when it finally happens, everything turns out okay. Did it work out because we worried? Not at all. It was going to work out anyway. So the worry was unnecessary because everything ended up being totally fine. So if worry doesn't change anything for the better, what do we do instead? We put that time and energy into something that actually helps. In life, we can't control everything, but there are things we can control. And that's where our focus needs to go. Like, if I'm worried about failing something, I prepare better. And other times the mind goes, what if I made the wrong choice? What's going to happen? But once the choice is already made, the only thing we can do is give it our best. So it doesn't become a wrong choice. That part is in our control. And if it still ends up being the wrong choice, then all we can do is accept it. That's the part we can't control. That's just life. All we can do is our part and let go of the rest. And sometimes the things we have no control over are the ones that scare us the most. Like, what if something bad happens? Or what if my cat dies one day? But that's the nature of life. We do what we can, and beyond that, we allow life to happen. And the more we fight reality, the harder it gets. Acceptance is really the key to peace. There's nothing we can do in those situations but accept them, instead of draining ourselves over what's outside our control. But there are moments when those thoughts and imagined scenarios feel way too real, and it becomes hard to step back from the emotion. When that happens, I try to map out the worst case scenario and think about how I'd respond if it really happened. Worry usually comes from not knowing what's going to happen, from the unknown. But once I write down the worst case scenario, everything feels clearer and a lot less overwhelming. I can finally see what I'm scared of with a bit of distance. And once it's on paper, it doesn't look nearly as terrible or unmanageable as it felt in my head. And in that moment, I see that I can handle it. Maybe not perfectly, but enough to keep going. Once I see my fears clearly, they start to feel a lot lighter. Making plans helps me feel grounded. And once I've done my part, it becomes much easier to let go of everything else. In the end, it all comes down to awareness and acceptance. The more I understand what I'm feeling and the more I accept what I can't control, the less power my worries have over me. Because peace isn't about having no fear or no uncertainty. It's about not losing myself in them. When I become aware, I stop getting trapped in thoughts. When I accept, I stop fighting what has already happened. And in that space, life starts to feel lighter, calmer, and I finally feel free. And somewhere between awareness and acceptance, I find stillness. Not outside, but within.